especially the participants, that would be great. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for a conversation on climate change and sustainability for Millburn. This session is being hosted by a student chapter of a local volunteer group called Millburn for Climate Action. To give our audience as well as our participants a little background on this group, I want to tell you how we started about 4 years back. Incidentally, this group came together 4 years back as an outcome of a very impromptu discussion between a few residents in town wanting to show solidarity with Greta Thunberg's march in New York City as part of Climate Week in 2019. We are right now going through Climate Week, New York City 2023, and the slogan this year is "We Can and We Will." So going back to 2019, we wanted to show solidarity. However, instead of a march or a rally, we decided to host a town hall event and rented Bohr Center. And just by word of mouth publicity over a couple days, invited all residents and students to come together and present their ideas on topics such as plastic pollution, native plants, etc. We were quite pleasantly surprised to have a hall full of enthusiastic participants, especially kids as young as 6 to 7 years old, who talked very passionately about plastic pollution and its impact to marine life. This informal network of concerned and passionate citizens became Millburn for Climate Action. In the past 4 years, this group has been working through its volunteers on creating awareness through educational campaigns about sustainability and climate change, and organizes events such as native plant swaps, Halloween costume swaps, cleanup drives, and others. We show up at school events with a refillable water station to reduce plastic water bottle waste. We support efforts by our Environmental Commission and Green Team and have helped Millburn achieve its Sustainable Jersey certification. We show up at Township committee meetings to show support for ordinances such as the one on plastic straws and bags, and our members are enthusiastic participants in Township's food waste recycling program. We are completely based on volunteer participation and open to all residents in town. Our active members include professors, economists, scientists, Wall Street executives, homemakers, entrepreneurs, CPAs, and more. We are not a special interest group or a fringe hobby group. We would like to believe that we actually speak for the majority in town, perhaps which is not as vocal, and particularly a majority which does not even have a voice, such as our students here. However, the only thing that's common in this group is that our goal is to make Millburn a sustainable community. What the world has witnessed in the last few years with climate change, I hope, has taught everyone that environmental sustainability is also economic sustainability. Therefore, by definition, economic development has to be sustainable development. Sustainable development is defined as a development that meets the present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Therefore, we decided to give this platform to our Millburn students to ask some questions about sustainability priorities in our town. Even though these students are not voting in this election, we really think their voice is an important one. And the adults in this community, parents, school administrators, and our elected officials really need to listen to what they have to say. So this is why we have students here who will be asking some questions of our guests tonight, which are the Republican Party candidates, Ben Stoller and Frank Sacomandi. So Ben and Frank, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. And I'd like to start off by, giving you a few minutes each to just give an introduction to our audience and tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'll go ahead and begin. And thank you, Vanita, for putting this together with the young adults here. It's a great cause. My name's Ben Stoller. I've lived in the area with my wife and 4 children since 1999. All 4 of my children have attended the public schools. 3 have graduated. 1 is in 7th grade, little Sarah. I volunteered as a coach for just about every sport, including chess. So I certainly understand the need for green space and fields versus egregious overbuilding that's occurring in our town now. A bit of information about me. I began my career as a financial analyst in mergers and acquisitions and parlayed that into numerous other roles of increasing responsibility over the years. Currently, I am co-founder and manager of a private equity type holding company of environmentally friendly companies rooted in supply chain, logistics, and all steeped in sustainability. Basically, a really good way to give back and help on the environmental front. ESG is one of our mainstays. Our company believes the shareholders, employees, customers, communities, regulators, townships now expect companies to play a role in decarbonizing the global economy. A few things that will impact capital allocation decisions more than ever are how we effectively navigate the global energy transition in these years ahead, hence promoting the long-term value of these companies. My firm's belief is that every company in every industry will be transformed positively by the transition to a net zero world, that in a few short years, we have all watched innovators reimagine the auto industry. And today, every car manufacturer is racing toward an electric future. However, that is merely a drop in a bucket in our expectations on where it's going to go. Engineers and scientists who we meet with every day are currently working around the clock to decarbonize cement, steel, plastic, shipping, trucking, aviation. The global economy is creating the greatest investment opportunity we believe that we'll see. In fact, the next 1,000 unicorns like Facebook and Instagram and such are going to be in the green space is our belief. That greenhouse gases will leave companies behind in municipalities, cities, and countries in the position of destabilizing the health of their community. We ask three basic questions when we look at companies. What are you doing to disrupt your business? How are you preparing for and participating in the net zero transition? And as your industry transforms by the energy transition, will you go the way of the dodo or will you become a phoenix? These are all questions that apply to Millburn and how Millburn and your group looks at these different growth opportunities from within. Driving an EV or hybrid versus a gas power automobile is positive. Moving from gas appliances is positive. Composting is positive. Creating the mindset as a community together to grow together is really where we want to go and what we're all about. Our platform is about saving Millburn from overdevelopment that flies in the face of sustainable living. Congestion, noise pollution, traffic emissions are all unacceptable byproducts. And I believe we have a duty to become environmentalists and stewards of the earth. If we don't do that, we're doing our generation, our kids' generation, and all future generations a disservice. So transparency around our township's planning for a net zero world is one of the most important elements that I can think of, and I show it in day-to-day business. And it's exciting to see everyone on this Zoom call. I was happy to meet a number of these guys at the native plant swap you held at the library with Radhika, and thank you, Radhika. So when Frank and I are elected, we'll work hand in hand with you to deliver meaningful change the right way. And please know that our door is always open to young people. We want to work with you. And at the end of the day, I'm cultivating the next generation of changers that can run companies that we can invest in. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for sharing your background. We certainly did not know, and this is interesting, right? As we are in Climate Week, and some of us have been attending some events in New York City, around these topics. So to hear all these buzzwords from your mouth, this is pretty refreshing. Okay, so we'll move on to Frank. Frank, if you would like to say a few words. And again, I just say, we are sort of, we can go beyond 9 p.m. a little bit, 9:30 p.m. a little bit, but we'll try to stick a little bit to our time frame here. So if you can be brief about your introduction, Frank, that would be great.
Sure. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Frank Sacamandi, and some of you may know me from when I ran for Township Committee last year. And a little bit about me, I'm an IT infrastructure engineer at a hedge fund in Manhattan. I take an engineering approach to everything that I do. I don't simply take things at face value. I like to dive into problems and really figure out, intricate solutions to complex problems. And I think that a lot of those skills will be directly applicable to the Township Committee. My husband and I decided to build our home in Millburn here 5 years ago, and we were drawn to Millburn because of the easy commute to the city, the fantastic schools, and the bucolic suburban environment. My husband and I have plans to start a family, and we wanted our future children to grow up in a safe town filled with talented, hardworking, and ambitious individuals. And Millburn fit that criteria. Now, I never thought I would get involved in politics, but last year I ended up joining Oyen's campaign after seeing some of the devastating plans that the current township committee had to overdevelop our town. And I was especially concerned about the fact that they were trying to build housing on a highly contaminated dump. And that has all sorts of environmental issues. Unfortunately, I didn't win last year, but I decided to run again this year because I feel it's important that we have a change and we have new faces and new blood that are actually going to try and go out and do things for the community as opposed to just blindly following a party agenda and outside influence. And that brings me to why I am running as a Republican. So for the better part of a decade, I was a registered Democrat, and I actually changed my political affiliation to run last year because, in our town, like many other towns, we're a two-party system. And if you're not running as one of the parties, as we saw with the independent candidates last year, it's hard to get any traction. Knowing that this is a local election and I'm focused on local issues, I changed over to the Republican Party in order to run. But one of the things that Ben and I want to do is we want to remove the party politics from our local political system. And, when we win, Ben and I commit to putting forth a referendum to give residents the opportunity to move the town to nonpartisan local elections. Because the political parties that we have in this country are so polarizing. And quite honestly, I don't fit into either one of the political parties, right? I'm in the middle with a lot of my beliefs. And I think you'll see with some of our policies and suggestions tonight that we are very forward thinking when it comes to the environment and sustainability. So thank you very much, and I look forward to answering all of your questions.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for that introduction. So we'll move right into our first student's question here. So Kunal Chatterjee, if you're on, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you so much. Firstly, before I present my questions, I want to thank you both for taking your time out to do this. So just a brief little introduction about me. My name is Kunal, and I'm a junior at Millburn High School, and I'm a student volunteer with the Millburn for Climate Actions. And the questions I will ask you both today pertain to the development and promoting of green transportation and options and infrastructure in our town. So my first question relates to having more EV infrastructure in our town, because as we all know, the upsides of having an EV are tremendous. Electric vehicles improve air quality, reduce GHG emissions, and save owners money on fuel and maintenance. And according to the Environmental Defense Fund, a medium-sized EV produces 60 to 68% fewer greenhouse emissions over its lifetime in comparison to that of a gas-powered car. And that being said, according to Charge Hub, there are only 3 charging stations in our town. Simply put it, there's just not enough. And I see that neighboring towns are putting a lot more effort into development of EV infrastructure. For example, the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, NJTPA, they partnered with many New Jersey towns, including Montclair, Secaucus, Woodbridge, and the goal of the project was to develop local readiness plans to facilitate the use of alternatively fueled vehicles, AFVs, in those communities. And the selection of these towns are based on their leaders' willingness to openness to revising regulations to the infrastructure to support the utilization of AFVs among residents, visitors. And as a resident of Millburn, I'm just curious, why didn't the NJTPA consider Millburn? Secondly, going to my second question, we would like to hear your thoughts on how you would make Millburn a more pedestrian and biker-friendly town, because as a high schooler, I observe on a daily basis the traffic jams choking our downtown. very frankly, a lot of students would gladly bike to school if given the chance, if they felt safe in riding their bikes through our town streets during the morning rush hour. For comparison, a lot of our similarly placed towns have made much more investment in this area. When we look at Chatham Borough's investment into the safe routes, as well as Hoboken, as they've installed bicycle infrastructure on about 37% of their streets and have deployed innovative bicycle facilities such as bicycle boxes to keep riders safe. Montclair as well as invested in safe routes, and they are the first municipality in New Jersey to pass a complete streets policy. And just to clarify to the audience, a complete streets policy is basically the street is able to service all modes of transportation. Not only that, but as well as those who want to use the street for non-transportation purposes as well. And just to briefly just define what the Safe Route program, if you guys aren't aware, it's just the state of New Jersey provides funds for projects and activities meant to enable children K through 12 to walk or bike safely to school. Because and some of the benefits of these programs as it reduces congestion, air pollution from cars as well. So just to summarize my two questions, what are your plans in implementing more EV infrastructure in our town, and how would you guys transform Millburn into more pedestrian and biker friendly town? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that question. So first off, I have to say I love electric vehicles. My husband and I both drive electric vehicles, and I think once you make the switch to an EV, you'll never want to go back. And right now we're sort of in a transition period where I think the technology has finally reached a point where the majority of residents should be comfortable using an EV as their primary vehicle. And so one of the things that I think we should do is incentivize private ownership of EVs in town. So one of the things that Ben and I will do is look to putting in regulations that make it so that anytime you're building a new home in town or substantially renovating an existing home, that you at the very least have to pre-wire every one of your garage parking spaces for EV charging. And if you don't have a garage, then we would have them pre-wire outside on the driveway for an EV charger. Because in 2035, New Jersey is going to outlaw the sale of new gas-powered vehicles. And that's a little ways off, but we need to have people start preparing and implementing the proper infrastructure for charging, so that they can take advantage of the new technology and be able to move to EVs. Additionally, I would look to create a small subsidy for the commuter parking permits for people that drove battery electric vehicles. And I would also look to work with third-party providers to potentially have charging stations installed at the train stations. I mean, there's a number of third parties out there that will come in, install the chargers and the necessary infrastructure in exchange for being able to charge customers for the power that they're using when they charge. Because there are a lot of people with existing homes in town that are older that might not have the capacity to have one or more EV chargers, and a lot of those individuals may commute. So wouldn't it be great if they could charge their vehicle at the train station? And then we could also look at putting this into all of the other municipal parking areas, because the more opportunities people have to charge, the more comfortable they'll feel about driving an EV, because they won't have to worry about running out of juice or where to charge. We could also consider doing some dedicated EV parking spaces that would also help act as an incentive for folks to move to an EV. And we would work with the DEP to use some of the programs to help offset the purchasing of maintaining vehicle charging stations if we couldn't get a third party to provide those for free. So we also want to focus on the town's municipal vehicle fleet, because that's low-hanging fruit. And what we would do is we would seek to put a plan in place so that as municipal vehicles are replaced, they're replaced with EVs. So this means that we need to put in the proper EV charging infrastructure for the municipal vehicles. And we also have to be mindful of the fact that, with all of the climate change that's going on, we could face a situation like we did during Sandy, where the town didn't have power for 6 days. So we're going to have to make sure that we have generators available at these municipal locations so that the municipal vehicles can be charged and continue to run in the event of a grid failure. So that's something that we would definitely look to implement. And then another thing, while it's not 100% related to EVs, I would look to have our town start purchasing green energy. And I think we could work with other towns that are already doing this and see if we could get some sort of group rate. And if that were the case, I think that would go a long way in helping to reduce the carbon footprint. Then as far as making town more friendly to pedestrians and bikers, we need to do a better job of maintaining our roadways. We need to add sidewalks where possible. We need to make sure that we have adequate bike parking in all of our municipal areas and downtown. We also should probably look at the safety issues around some of these e-bikes, and we might want to set reasonable, speed limits for them, because some of these e-bikes can go quite fast and can pose a danger, and we don't want bikers to be posing a danger to pedestrians. We would also look to make sure we have the streets well lit, well maintained. So, I think with all of these initiatives, improving the residential uptake of EVs, improving the town's use of EVs, and then working to make sure our streets are safe and pedestrian friendly, we'll be able to make a positive impact.
Yeah, and hey, Kunal, nice to see you again. Saw you last at the library. Pedestrian safety and bicycling is near and dear to my heart because of the 4 children we've had go through the school system. And my 7th grader, 12-year-old, every time she comes home from school, she has an experience where she's almost hit by a car, it seems. So it is very dear to my heart. I fear for the safety, especially with the voluminous amount of buildings going up and the cars that they're going to bring in. Promoting pedestrian cycle friendly infrastructure in Millburn absolutely will enhance the quality of life for residents and reduce the traffic congestion, improve safety, and contribute to more sustainable community altogether. When you talk about complete streets, I usually think about it as infrastructure policy. How do we develop and implement an infrastructure, a total infrastructure that ensures that all roadways are designed with the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists in mind, and we prioritize the creation of safety, accessibility, and well-marked sidewalks and bike lanes on streets if the children are expected or people are expected to bicycle in the street, which seems they are. Sidewalk improvement program. How do we repair and expand the sidewalks? I can't tell you the amount of times I'm walking home from the train station and I've seen a kid hit a bad sidewalk and go over the handlebars. So from a straw man standpoint, safe, just improving the infrastructure in town, sidewalk improvements, better crosswalks and traffic calming measures. I don't think we have any traffic calming measures that are suitable with everyone double parked on Main Street and such. Becomes a real difficult issue to navigate through Main Street. But we holistically agree that, from a community engagement, we need to work together as a community, seek input from residents, community groups, local organizations, and prioritize pedestrian and bicycle projects.
Thank you, Ben and Frank. And, of course, with anything in life, devil is in the details, right? So, one is wishful thinking that, yes, we need to make our town more biker and pedestrian friendly, but how exactly we go about it? How do we actually get our residents in neighborhoods such as Deerfield, where I live, to, think about, we have the big houses and then we have the roads. Sometimes I think about, could there be a way to convince residents to give up a little portion of their front yards where, the township actually owns the trees, right? And could we create an additional space for kids to drive their bikes and really create a continuous biking path throughout our township? I don't know, but again, we are really talking about students willing to bike from different locations, Deerfield, and other areas, Hartshorn, to their schools, but right now they don't really have that option because of the safety issue. So
I agree 100%. We bought our property and our home in the historical section of Wyoming where we live. because of the sidewalks. I promise you. We grew up with sidewalks. We wanted the children to feel safe on the sidewalks. When you're walking literally in the street, there are ways that we can improve that. And we look forward to working together to find those ways and solve that issue.
Thank you for that. We are a little bit behind on time, so I am going to try to put some discipline around this and just maybe wave at you and say that, okay, let's try to wrap up your response to this question, but we'll move on to our next student now. So Aryan Jane, are you ready with your questions?
Yes, I am. Hi, I just wanted to thank you both for taking the time to listen to our questions and concerns, giving us a voice to express ourselves. My name is Aryan Jain, and I am a sophomore at Millburn High School and a student volunteer with Millburn for Climate Action. I've participated in environmental projects and green volunteer work for a very long time because I, like a lot of other adolescents and young adults, am deeply, deeply passionate about the protection of our rich flora and fauna. However, we are facing the twin threats of a rapidly warming world and an ecological degradation, which includes the alarming extinction of many keystone species. While historically most cities considered the beauty, budget, maintenance, and fast growth when selecting trees, shrubs, and flowers to plant in municipal landscapes, today more and more communities are planting with a purpose: to help disappearing bees, butterflies, songbirds, and other wildlife, and to reconnect their cities to the local ecosystems. Native plants are crucial in restoring ecological balance, and they also help reduce water usage and runoff, improve air and water quality, and are often more resilient and adaptable to changing environmental conditions, such as drought, flooding, and extreme temperatures, thereby reducing in maintenance costs and requirements. This makes them both environmentally and economically sustainable. Now, policy changes at a local level can mandate or prioritize native plants. Some students in this group have worked on drafting a native plant resolution that seeks to mandate native plants on municipal grounds. This has been sent to the Environmental Commission, and we really hope that the EC and Township Council will work proactively to pass an ordinance promptly. However, we want to go beyond this, and we wonder why we are limiting these efforts to municipal grounds alone. Student and resident volunteers have nurtured pollinator gardens in their own yards, but for many others in town, a little push from the township could go a long way to change behaviors. Minnesota economically incentivized homeowners to convert their lawns to pollinator gardens by providing a $500 incentive. Would you follow Minnesota's lead and consider providing residents a motive to grow native plants, given the tremendous public benefits of pollinator-friendly plants and shrubs? Now, before your responses, I also wanted to touch on a second topic, which is disaster prevention. Now, we have had many natural disasters over the years, and we all remember that 2 years ago, Hurricane Ida completely swamped Millburn downtown and illustrated that climate resiliency should be prioritized in any municipal development plan. What are your thoughts on climate disaster resilience and prevention? And what would be some steps that you would take to make Millburn more resilient? Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question and the two questions. I'm going to go in reverse order, if that's okay. In terms of disaster preparedness and resiliency plan for Millburn, creating a disaster preparedness and climate resiliency plan for a township like Millburn, which has approximately 26,000 residents, is essential to protect our lives and property in the face of various natural and human-made disasters that seem to be occurring way too often and may be the new norm. We need to develop a comprehensive, organized approach to preparing for these and the more extreme weather, and includes adopting and amending its ordinances to address stormwater management and partnering with other government agencies, quasi-governmental organizations, and utility providers to prepare the borough to withstand these severe storms. And it seems like Ida was yesterday. The borough of Dunellen, which also had a severe blowback from Ida, is believed to be the first climate resiliency plan in the state of New Jersey. I don't think that's acceptable. We should have it here in Millburn. There are about 4,000 residents. We're 26,000, and we have such a great crew of young people ready to press forward with us to institute that. We reached out to the mayor of Dunellen, Jason Ciliento, and spoke with him. He's actually sent over a few of the things that they're doing to make that happen. And if you guys don't know, Jason started out his career as a high school student and was involved in their climate action group and has grown up into the mayor of Dunellen. So that's fantastic. In terms of how we present a quote unquote, a straw man plan to approach a similar preparedness plan, we want to analyze current and future threats and vulnerabilities of the municipality associated with climate change, build out our own analysis of future residential, commercial, industrial, and other developments. How does all this overbuilding affect the sewer systems and such? How do we stop flooding upstream so by the time it gets to Millburn, it's not quite as devastating? Identifying critical facilities, utilities, roadways, other infrastructure, and analyze that potential impact of these natural hazards. We want to rely on the most recent natural hazard projections, not those from 1926 or the Farmer's Almanac. And we want to be inclusive of community engagement, have everyone involved through the planning process, public meetings, surveys, workshops, to gather input and share what we've learned with them. This will be very instrumental in making sure that it's effective. We must remember disaster preparedness and climate resiliency are ongoing processes, and if we must adapt and improve the plan as we move along. Now, supporting our ecosystem through native plants and regulating the use of chemical treatments, supporting ecosystems through native plants, we want to budget and use the current township's passive support of supporting the native species planting. We want to increase that budget. We want to work with the climate group and be able to press more funds towards that. We believe the funding and actively supporting strong volunteer support already out there promoting, hard at work on this important effort, must occur to restore and maintain species biodiversity in our town. Our health depends on it. Butterflies depend on it. I haven't seen as many butterflies this summer as well. Designating municipal spaces for planting, large and or small, and incorporating DPW maintenance, which is minimal with native plants. After the first year of watering, it's really that first year, and maintaining the pollinators and species in the ecosystems. Obviously, we want to recognize the harm caused to pollinators and other species by the use of pesticides and chemical applications that people put on their homes, also on municipal properties. That's where we could easily make a change. We are very familiar with the resolution, and both Frank and I were at the Township Committee when they provided it, and we wholly support it and hope to make it an ordinance when we're in office.
Thank you, Ben. Just to clarify, some of the volunteers in this group have actually drafted and updated. We have provided our suggestion to the Environmental Commission. And from what we understand, it is probably not going to be looked at for another few months because there are other priority items. However, the way we see it, does not even need to be debated. It is so benign. It really talks about prioritizing and mandating native plants on municipal grounds, nothing to do with residential homes. So it's really like, we don't need to be bureaucratic about everything and need to have so much time lapse with everything. So maybe that's something that can be pushed along. But as Aryan said, we are really looking for how are you going to incentivize Millburn homes. Millburn homes are some of the, we have some of the biggest front and backyards, very nicely, beautifully manicured. However, they're not really doing a great job for the pollinators. So how would you incentivize them? If we can have more thoughts on that from you, maybe at a later point, that would be great. But we're going to move along now to the next set of questions. All right. Shreya Iyer, are you ready?
Yep. Hi. Thank you for taking time to come and answer our questions today. My name is Shreya Iyer, and I'm a freshman at Millburn High School. My questions for you will relate to the waste footprint of our town and what measures you are prepared to introduce to curb it. Millburn has collected 6,600 tons of municipal waste and 2,100 tons of recycling waste in 2022 for all households and schools. For households only, this translates to roughly over half a ton per year or 100 pounds of curbside waste per month. We also know that following this process, the municipal waste goes to an incinerator in Newark to burn. For the full service, we have learned that we pay roughly $2.5 million to the Giordano's for the service. Traditionally, residents, including those of Millburn, pay for waste collection through property taxes or a fixed fee, regardless of how much or how little trash they generate. On the other hand, pay-as-you-throw programs treat trash services just like utilities. Households pay a variable rate depending on the amount of the service that they use. Pay-as-you-throw systems are a way to equitably charge for trash disposal while encouraging waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and backyard composting. 12 towns in New Jersey, such as Chatham, now use such systems, including thousands of communities all over the country. So our first question to you is, given how waste contributes to air, water, and soil pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, should Millburn consider pay-as-you-throw program, even though it may simply be a pretty economical for us currently to contract with Giordano's or even negotiate a cheaper price as they collect more waste? Second, I would like to specifically know about your plans for the disposal of organic waste. On average, we have learned that roughly 20% of municipal waste is organic, such as food scraps. This organic waste is left to decompose in landfills or is burnt. It produces methane and other pollutants, leading to air and water pollution. Instead, if it is recycled into compost, it turns into black gold that is a nutrient-rich addition for soil that feeds us all. Millburn, in an effort to reduce household food waste, has introduced a food recycling program in recent years as well, called the Food Waste Recycling Program. In this program, subscribers drop their household food scraps in the town yard for an annual fee of $60. The scraps are collected by Java's Compost. Based on the latest data collected, in 2022, we collected 45,000 pounds of food waste through the program, and about 50 to 60 families participated in it. The contract cost for this program is about $12,000, out of which $3,000 is being paid by the participating households. This pilot program has a capacity for around 75 households, yet only about 60 households are actually using the service. There are many interested people, yet many of them find it difficult to drop off food scraps to the township yard given the limited hours. So, our second question to you is, what would you do to create awareness for the current food waste recycling program offered to the Millburn Short Hills area to increase subscriptions to this service and perhaps make it more accessible to more Short Hills households to use it? Furthermore, since Millburn schools are a part of the municipal waste collection in Millburn, what are your thoughts on expanding the service to schools? A lot of students are very interested in this and currently MHS is running a pilot, although not very successfully due to resistance from school administration. Our suggestion is to have each of the elementary schools, as well as MMS and MHS, be a point of collection for the food scraps recycling program. This way, both the households and schools can participate in it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So, it's so important to reduce waste, and it's essential that we make sure that our residents are mindful of what and how much they throw away, so that they're motivated to recycle more, compost, and find ways to reduce waste that ultimately ends up in landfills, as you pointed out. Fewer materials going into landfills means reduced methane emissions and increased energy savings from recycling. Pay-as-you-throw programs would also help our residents become conscientious consumers who will take a critical look at the products they're buying and choosing items that don't come in plastic wrapping and excessively bulky containers. Pay-as-you-throw also helps prevent a tragedy of the commons situation that we currently have, whereby any household can throw out large amounts of trash with no penalties, thus increasing the cost of our community waste disposal in aggregate. However, with any initiative, there needs to be a change to resident behavior. We need to understand that there will be pushback, at least initially. No amount of educations will get individuals to change their behavior, so we need to be cognizant of the fact that many will resist this idea. As such, we would reach out to towns such as Chatham Borough, Mendham Township, Mountain Lakes Borough, that have already implemented pay-as-you-throw programs to understand how they implemented their programs and the lessons they learned from their experiences. After talking with other towns, We would try to figure out what makes the most sense for Millburn, and then try to customize a pay-as-you-throw program to suit the needs and goals of our community. Many pay-as-you-throw programs could actually end up saving our town money in the long run, as residents become more aware of the different ways they can reduce their waste footprint. We would also engage residents on this subject and get their input and perspective to see how we could make pay-as-you-throw as successful as possible. Long-term behavioral changes that we can cultivate in our residents can have a significant impact. As residents become accustomed to paying for waste based on usage, they'll be more likely to continue these waste reduction practices, even if fees are adjusted or removed, or if they plan to move to a different community. Now, with regards to composting, if we move to a pay-as-you-throw program, we're likely going to have to change our contracts with the municipal waste pickup programs. Since I think the town would have a cost savings with the pay-as-you-throw program, we might want to look and see if we could allocate some of that savings to doing some sort of composting program. Because what better way to get people to compost than to actually have compost pickup at their house, similar to how we have recycling pickup. We would also commit to working with the Board of Ed to have them start composting if they're not already doing so. So instead of having centralized locations where individuals can drop off their items to be composted, if we can have that as a weekly pickup service, that'll go a long way to actually getting people to start compost, especially if they're eventually going to be charged for the garbage. I'd say let's not meter and charge for the compost, because we want to encourage that. Additionally, I would want to start encouraging restaurants to compost, or maybe we could look at ways that we could actually mandate that, right? Restaurants produce a lot of food waste, and it seems like low-hanging fruit to get them to start composting.
Right. The expanding Millburn's food waste recycling program through that strategic approach absolutely involves community engagement, infrastructure development, as Frank discussed, education and collaboration. I believe the specifically ease of use is one of the most important elements to making that a successful project, going from, trying to go from 60 to 75 where the capacity is. The Java compost, great start. It's a great program to learn from, but how do we expand it? In terms of how the TC and how the township can assist, I believe it's all about community outreach and education. Education across all different levels, including handouts at the train station, including maybe a flyer that's hand delivered to houses, so people understand and know and can get the gist of how important this is, and actually that we are doing it in town. I believe some people don't even know that we're doing it. And frankly, if we can incentivize people from the savings that we have from the Giordano waste, if we can save those funds and maybe distribute a little bit of a kiss back to residents, in terms of a kiss, I mean a check, and incentivize residents to get on the program. And it's all about doing well. In my practice, in my businesses, there's scorecards at Walmart, at Costco, at Sam's, at Target. All the big companies have scorecards. Maybe we can create a good scorecard for residents. Hey, how are you doing? Are you getting an A, a B, a C? What are you doing? Are your kids, do you have an EV car? Things along those lines. Just think outside the box, and we work together. Right? It's all about community, and I think that's a big part of what I see disappearing. When I'm running because I don't want all the items to erode that brought us here, safety, closeness to Manhattan. But this is the stuff that really excites me in our community.
Thank you very much. And we really appreciate you thinking along the lines where we started a few years back, just asking our Environmental Commission and the Green Team that why don't we have composting service? Hoboken has it, Jersey City has it, so San Francisco has been doing it forever. And the repeated response was, our contract with Giordano's takes care of everything. How would we pay for a separate contract? It is actually cheaper to pay more, throw more, and Giordano's will collect it. In fact, I think there's a disincentive for them to collect lesser waste. So there are just wrong incentives built into the system at the moment. So we'd love to really find out how you're going to break through through these problems, right? I mean, because right now the economic system is not built to incentivize right behaviors.
And it all starts with us wanting to break through it. You know, the township community is comfortable. They have contracts. Who knows what's behind those contracts, but they've been in place for years, et cetera. Well, we have no allegiance, we have no ties, and we don't have any higher political aspirations. We're here to make change, and change for the young adults on this call and for future generations, so we can maintain the fabric of our community.
Thank you, Ben, and thanks, Frank. And I think we're doing okay on time now. So the last set of questions from Ishan Jain.
Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about a few different things. First, the plastic ordinance, and then introducing a ban on gas-powered blowers, leaf blowers. So firstly, hello, Mr. Sakamandi and Mr. Stoller. I want to thank you guys for giving us this chance to talk to you about this critical topic. So my name is Ishan Jain, and I'm a junior at the Pingree School and a volunteer with the Millburn for Climate Action Group. I was first introduced to the Millburn Green Team to the climate action conversation back in 2018 when I was in 5th grade. The then Millburn Green Team was hosting a poster competition, and actually behind me is the poster that I had submitted. Through that opportunity, I learned the damage plastic pollution was inflicting on marine life and other pretty shocking facts. Like, if we continued on the same pace we have been, by 2050, there would be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Back in 5th grade, I didn't really know why this problem was happening. I mean, if people just knew the negative implications that plastic pollution had on the environment and how that would trace back to us humans, wouldn't everyone just give up using plastics? Of course, as we all know, that's not really how it always plays out. Over the years, as I participated in various different projects in our community, I realized there is only so much we can do with awareness and education at times. And sometimes we do need laws and ordinances to change behaviors. Fortunately, at the time, the town's Green Team and Environmental Commission were working on an ordinance to ban straws and plastic bags, and we needed to rally support for that. So in 2018, we set up an informational booth at the Millburn Library for 3 days and asked people to take a personal pledge to reduce plastic use and support the ordinance. And in 2020, Millburn did pass this ordinance. Now, this was a win for the whole community, as this surely would start the process of Millburn becoming a more sustainable town. But unfortunately, I am disappointed to report that not only have we not made any further progress on that regard, we have been kind of going backwards with the lack of enforcement for current ordinances, with several Millburn restaurants continuing to give out straws without request. So my first question is revolved around the enforcement of the plastic ordinance, and what would you guys do to ensure residents and businesses are firstly aware of the problem and following the ordinance? My second and last question for the day is in regards to gas-powered leaf blowers. So needless to say, a leaf blower is synonymous with lawn maintenance, but the resulting noise and environmental pollution has led many communities to limit their use or ban them outright. Studies show that leaf blowers and other gas-powered lawn and garden equipment expose workers and the public to high levels of toxic and carcinogenic emissions. And in addition, just like the horrible facts about plastic waste, leaf blowers have pretty startling facts of their own. For example, 1 hour of leaf blowing is equivalent in emissions to driving 1,100 miles in a car. While I can talk about the over 150 different municipalities in the US that have banned or limited the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, just in our own state, towns like Summit and Princeton have already banned this device. Just in 2023, several townships have taken stride. Most recently, Montclair passed an ordinance to be effective this coming October 15th to completely ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers in favor of electric devices or other methods to remove lawn debris. Most notably, our neighbors in Maplewood have enacted a total ban, including personal use by residents and by those contracted for services on January 1st, 2023. So as such, the Millburn for Climate Action Group is now looking for support to pass another ordinance to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. So as a recap, will you assure us that the plastic ordinance we have in place will be enforced, and how so? Secondly, if you were elected as a township committee member, how will you support a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers? Thank you again for this opportunity, and I really appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you very much for those questions. So I'm going to start with the plastics. So, the first thing we have to do is have better enforcement of the existing ordinances in place, but we need to take that one step further, and we need to introduce further ordinances to limit usage of single-use plastics. So the current state law requires that straws are provided on an opt-in basis. That is, a restaurant should only provide it if a customer requests it. As you pointed out, this is not enforced. Many restaurants across the state openly flout it, especially those in our town. Plastic bags are also banned by restaurants, but this again is not always enforced. We would make sure that code enforcement officers in town actually do their job by issuing the fines that are already on the books. After all, a law that isn't enforced doesn't have any teeth will do nothing to change individual behavior, which was obviously the intended goal in passing the law in the first place. And we would take this one step further and go beyond what the state has already put in place, and we would ban all plastic straws in Millburn. There are plenty of more environmentally friendly options that exist, and we see no reason why we can't be a leader here in Millburn. We would also add a local ordinance whereby restaurants in town should provide utensils on an opt-in basis, and the utensils that are provided should be compostable and not plastic. It is also important for our society as a whole to reduce plastic pollution, which ends up in oceans, rivers, and harms wildlife and marine life and other ecosystems, as you pointed out. So, we feel the current plastic ban just doesn't go far enough, and we can go further. And, I think that the town is ready for that. So now moving on to the gas-powered leaf blowers. So the short answer is yes. Ben and I commit to putting forth an ordinance to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. That being said, it's important for us to have a phased implementation so that professional lawn care companies and homeowners can procure the necessary equipment. We would want to reach out to our neighbors in Maplewood to understand their experience in implementing a gas leaf blower ban and hear the lessons learned from their recent implementation. We shouldn't work alone because Millburn is not isolated. Our understanding is that the Green Team has worked with South Orange and Maplewood in the past, and it's important to foster working relationships to learn and grow wherever possible. We should also look to see if there are any public grants or incentives that might help homeowners and lawn care companies defray the costs of their transition to electric blowers. Because obviously, this is going to cause increased costs for the lawn care companies and for the homeowners. And, we should make use of any available public funds to help defray those costs. A lot of the stuff that we've mentioned tonight would benefit greatly from publicly available money. And I think that Millburn should consider hiring a dedicated individual that is responsible for seeking out grants, not just for environmental issues, but there's plenty of other grants available for a lot of other stuff we do in town. And, if we had someone that was dedicated to this task, I'm sure they would more than pay for their salary with all of the, public funding that they would be able to find and identify. So, in summation, we would enforce the existing plastic laws. We would extend them via ordinance to ban all plastic utensils and make them opt-in. And we would ban gas-powered leaf blowers, but we would first engage the community and we would look at what the appropriate phase-in period is after talking with our peers that have successfully implemented these programs.
Thank you, Frank. But I'll just point out one thing to you. So this gas-powered leaf blower ask is not a new one. Several of us residents have been asking for it a number of years and have been pointing to Maplewood. Just so you know, also Maplewood also had a phased plan. They had a partial ban for almost 6 years, but they started it 6 years back, and now they have a full ban. Millburn starting at a very late. We are very late to the party here, so we can do a phased-in plan, but we need to move fast.
Yeah,
right? Because we're already behind the curve.
I think we could look to doing a 2 year at most, but I would prefer a 1 year phase-in period because, as you pointed out, if our neighboring towns are doing this, then a lot of the lawn care companies, they're not working just in our town, they're working in the surrounding towns. So they're probably already having to go through this transition. And so, we can benefit from the fact that a lot of them are already transitioning so that we can have a shorter phased implementation period.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so Maplewood and Montclair, if you want to look at both of those towns, that would be great. All right, so we did pretty good on time. I think we are well within our 9:30 end time, but I would like to just, since we have a few more minutes here, we can take a few questions from the audience here. If anybody wants to raise their hand, the first who wants to go, and please don't ask the questions that have been asked already if you have something new to ask. Ishan, Akula, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'll try to make this quick. So, sustainability initiatives like ranging from adoption of renewable energy sources to effective waste reduction and the promotion of green transportation options, which we talked about. play a vital role in both curbing carbon emissions and enhancing the resilience of our community, which you probably know. With this in mind, could you please share your plans for promoting and implementing these sustainability initiatives and specifically targeting the reduction of carbon emissions? For example, what strategies would you advocate to ensure a more eco-friendly and resilient, a healthier future for our residents?
Yeah,
That's
that's a
great. And
good.
maybe, yeah, sorry, Ben, I just want to, so the questions that we asked so far, I think those were coming from us. I think Ishan has a great point. What is on your mind? Is environmental sustainability, climate change top of your agenda? Were you thinking about some things that maybe we didn't ask you about?
No, I definitely agree. And I started to get it in my opening statements that you think of noise pollution, you think of traffic congestion and the pollution of the emissions of CO2 emissions of cars sitting at stoplights for minutes and minutes on end, where it now takes 25 minutes to get from one side of town to the next side of town. Talking about how do we work with county and state officials to make green transportation efficient? How do we make walking paths from Millburn all the ways up to Montclair so we can enjoy the reserve, right behind me, the South Mountain? How do we put that in place? And we know we have to spend some money, but that's what it's about, building the infrastructure now. Infrastructure doesn't build itself. And can we work with national groups to also help facilitate paying for some of these initiatives? I think there was $426 million allocated to Dunellen. I think that was the number he gave me to help with flood mitigation. Well, how much money have we received for flood mitigation? We need to press hard and not be complacent or conflicted or owe any of our vendors and or providers such as Giordano or any of the landscapers, and we have to make real change, and we have to make it now.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. And some other things that we've been considering, and I alluded to this before, I'd really like to see the municipality move to purchasing 100% renewable energy for all of our municipal buildings, schools, et cetera. And I think this is something that was looked at a few years ago, and they concluded that it was simply too expensive. But again, if we had a dedicated individual that was there to seek grants and other public monies, we could try and find some cost relief there. And we could also look at other towns that have successfully implemented green energy programs and see if we can get some sort of group rate or discounted rate. Look, I think there's some low-hanging fruit, and this is an example of low-hanging fruit that we should be able to move on pretty quickly, because it's just a matter of finding the resources that we need in the budget and then making it happen. And we're committed to making it happen.
Yeah, and it all really starts with an overall community plan that's done arm in arm with this group and other groups. It's about refreshing our professionals who may have become complacent in their positions and not looking at other opportunities. And that's our municipal attorney, that's our business administrator, that's all the people that have been in place for quite some time and have not pressed forward on the change. This town doesn't need rubber stamp cronies for township committee members. We have the best and the brightest. And trust me, when I came forward, I knew it was a lot of work. However, I committed to it because of all the young adults on this call, on this Zoom call, because that is what has to be done.
Appreciate that, Ben. And Frank, maybe one more question, anybody? If not, I'd ask Radhika Iyengar and Nidhi Thakur. She would like to make any closing comments here.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Ben and Frank. It's very refreshing to hear your ideas and plans going forward. I think they look very concrete. I just want to add that I think Millburn is running, I think 30 to 50 years behind times. And we really need to have a sustainability plan. It's very basic as this. So I feel that if, things go forward and you guys are elected, then I think I give you 1 year. If that doesn't happen, then Vanita and I will make a plan with all our eco ambassadors. And then you have to bear the consequences of our plan. So I feel that this is high time. We need to really have a plan with the township committee that will be elected, and we are here to support you. And I think it's high time that we come up with a plan that will help maybe other counties, maybe other towns to follow our lead. We cannot sit back and relax. And I think the students here show the interest and show the passion. We are all here to support the township committee to make their own plans, and to make the sustainability plan for the town, and also for showing what we are capable of to other towns and other counties in New Jersey and maybe across the US. So why don't we take the lead? I'm still waiting for us for the town to take the lead in this initiative. We will have all the support from the state. We will have all the support from all the scientists that you will need for any plan that you would create. So I really would urge us to think about sustainability as the forefront and most important topic, and not as a side agenda. I think we are done with the side agenda, because that's really not going to happen. So but I really value all your suggestions and comments, and as we go forward, and I would really urge us to for the township committee to think about us as a group that can come up and make a plan with you all. And please count us in, and if ever you need all our help, we will be there with all our research and support and anything that you need from our end. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, thank you, Radhika. Your energy and passion, and the energy and passion of this group of young adults, comes through loud and clear. I commit to you that we will push forward for that community sustainability plan. Our residents deserve it. And as you said, we have one of the most affluent communities, but one of the most brilliant communities in the country. We have to use those resources, work together, and build this community up to be a leader. I mentioned it earlier. Dunellen is the first resiliency plan. We can do better, and we will do better. And that's part of the reason that Frank and I are running.
I'll add in here. Thank you, Ben and Frank and Vanita, kids, everybody here. So I definitely enjoyed all the, wonderful initiatives that you think you might be able to undertake. For instance, just the fact that there are something called enforcement officers in town that we, the general public, can access. I mean, that itself has been like, are there or are there not? That information needs to be out there to every one of us, because we see these plastic bags, we see these straws, we just don't know who to take this to. So that public messaging around these kind of issues will be very good. And then you also mentioned around the beginning that, across party lines, because you are a political seat of sorts. But as Radhika and everybody here has mentioned, this issue is beyond politics, right? So across party lines, if you were elected, we'd really like you to go out and above party lines and just make this the issue which is relevant to all of us, as opposed to one constituency versus another. So thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just to talk a little bit about the enforcement. One of the things that we're planning on doing to help combat crime, I think, could also be useful in this context. So we proposed the town building a See Something, Say Something app that could be used to report suspicious activity or criminal activity. Why not make use of that app to also report restaurants that aren't abiding by the plastic ban or the straw ordinance or these other environmental ordinances that are in place. So you were saying you need a way to get this enforced. Well, in addition to having code enforcement, which we have for other codes, we would rely on the public to see something and say something, and then we could go and investigate that.
Right.
That's an idea for you, Frank. Just run a competition for our school kids here, and you'll get the best apps in the world, right? The best technology tools for whatever you want done.
Absolutely. That was going to be my point. Involve the community and the children, the young adults who are on this can do it. I know they can. The other thing that we're lacking sorely, and and is leadership. Where is our leadership in this town? No one is stepping up. No one is communicating. Everyone, they pass out a lot of medals and a lot of awards, but where is the leadership to lead on tough issues that must be made today? If we look at the fabric of the township committee as it exists after Ms. Miggins and Sanjeev leave, we have to see, is that the committee we want running our town? Do they have the leadership? Do they have the fight to help bring us where we want to go? And that's some things that we all have to work together. We need a groundswell of support. It starts with young adults talking to their parents. Hey, we heard these guys. This isn't about party. This is about Millburn residents and where we want to go in the future.
Thank you for that, Ben. And again, we want to keep politics out of it, and we want to look forward. And from this point on, I do want to make one point, and Radhika, apologies if I sound that I'm making a contradictory statement to what you said. We are all for helping. We are all for volunteering our town, time for the right cause. And we all have been doing, we have been spending a tremendous amount of time already. But what I'm really looking for, as you said, the leadership, the elected officials need to take the lead here. We need a sustainability officer for town, somebody whose job is to drive these initiatives. It can't be left to, if you have the time, volunteers, please come together, plant this pollinator garden. Volunteers, if you have the time, go clean up Ravi River. I mean, we are all for it, but this is a big enough priority that it needs its own budget, and it needs to be top priority for a township budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're an affluent town. Ben and I plan to go through the budget, and I'm sure we're going to identify a lot of waste, and we're going to be able to free up a lot of funds, and then we could apply those funds to have perhaps a dedicated sustainability manager or leader that can help really take the reins. But we still do need as much help as possible, and
Absolutely.
the ideas from all of you. I mean, that's really critical. And, a lot of the folks here on this call, you represent the next generation. And, we look to you for ideas and leadership. But again, yeah, I would support looking into getting a dedicated, even if it was on a part-time basis, but, a dedicated resource to help advance these climate and sustainability initiatives. And the other thing is, because Ben and I want to move the town to nonpartisan politics, I think by taking, the political parties out of it and taking the outside influence out, that will allow, more residents to feel free voicing their opinion, more residents to step up and get involved, so that, people that are really passionate about these things can, move into leadership roles or join committees. Right now, with our current leadership, they stack the committees with their friends and neighbors. They don't necessarily look at the qualifications of the individuals. I can see on this call, there's a lot of folks here that I think would be great for a number of, environmental and sustainability committees. And, by moving to nonpartisan elections, we can help take the politics out of it and allow the residents to have the clearest possible voice.
Thank you. And I think that's a great statement from you to have it as a closing statement for this session today. So thanks everybody for joining. Thanks to all our audience for listening in. Thanks to the student volunteers who spent a lot of time researching these questions to present to you. But thank you, Ben and Frank, for really making the time to speak to all of us. Appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone.
Having us.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nidhi. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.